Welcome to Fintech Daydreaming, the podcast that dives into the world of banking technologies and the ever-changing landscape of fintech companies. We bring you real-life examples from global and local thought leaders, as well as experts working within the financial industry, and seek out the best stories from the front lines of financial services innovation, where dreams of industry pioneers meet reality. Hosted by Pål Krogdahl and Ville Sointu. This is Fintech Daydreaming.
Welcome back, dear listeners and watchers, depending upon whether you are following us on YouTube or not. If you're on YouTube, you can see us and hear us. Actually, I do believe that on Spotify, they're also now showing the videos. So on Spotify as well, you can see us and hear us. You are watching, you are listening. But the most important part is you've joined us again for another episode of Fintech Daydreaming. This is one of our special episodes with Janne from Helsinki Fintech Farm. So it is a Nordic Fintech highlights episode. But as it is the last episode of this season, season 13, we decided to pivot a little bit. We're not going to do a deep dive into news articles. We're going to just do a reflection of the season that's been closed down for the summer and go away and relax and recharge batteries and get ready for season 14. As always, I am Pål Krogdahl. I'm going to be a host for this episode, although I'm not quite sure who's hosting and who's not hosting and how it all works out, but I'm going to try and host or at least lead some of the discussions here today. But as always, I never do this alone. I have my partner in fintech, my partner in podcast, my partner in almost everything else in life. Almost. I do have a girlfriend, a fiance actually now. So on that part, he is not my partner, but in most other things he is. Ville, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. It's a bit funny to actually record this end of season episode, summer episode, after I already had 2 weeks of summer vacation. But, we go as the flow goes. And I'm still looking forward to having a bit of a wind down during July, even though I'll be working, and then have another go at the summer vacation towards September. But that's getting ahead of ourselves. And let's talk about what happened this season.
Yes, absolutely. And in contrast to you, I have not been on summer vacation yet. Even though we are recording this, I will start my vacation almost directly after this. So I need to do some fast editing and publishing. By the time this goes live and out to everybody, I will be relaxing on my vacation for a short little break and taking it very easy. But there is a big activity ongoing for me that will be going through the whole of this summer. My book that I have been talking so much about, Rip Out the Core, is finished. It is ready. It is getting published. It will be published officially at the end of July. It is available now for pre-order on Amazon. But most importantly, I will be doing a book launch event in Helsinki on the Thursday, the 13th of August. Registration is open if you are interested in attending the event. It is limited space available. The registration link is available in the description. Please go and have a look, see if this is relevant for you and register. I am so excited about this. It's not going to be a traditional, simple book launch. It will be an event to a certain degree, focusing in on the progressive modernization of core banking systems, the move from legacy to the future, everything that's happening around agentic AI, everything that's happening in our industry, the fundamental disruption that we are all facing in the banking industry. We're going to pull it all together. I will do a very quick presentation, obviously, a little bit around the book. There will be a fireside chat. I'm sure Ville will get involved in one way or another in all of this. I am so excited that Helsinki Fintech Farm has decided to sponsor the event. They are the main sponsors. The registration page, as you will see, is hosted by Helsinki Fintech Farm. They are making the venue available in Helsinki where we will be. They'll also help with a little bit of the recording and everything else. Another sponsor that's got involved is Aura Cloud, a growing and fantastically interesting cloud-native core banking solution provider out of the Nordics. They are going to make a copy of the book available to all participants for free. So turn up, register, join us for a great discussion, and leave with a copy of my book. And if you're really lucky, I might even sign it for you. You might think that that's unlucky. Maybe you don't want to have my signature in the book, but I hope you would. Then I will sign the book for you, absolutely. But now I have rambled on quite a lot about this. You can tell I'm excited about this. Let's move on. We also have Janne with us. And Janne, I have to say, before I ask how you are, I have to say thank you so much for your support and your involvement in this book, the book journey, both as you individually and also as Helsinki Fintech Farm, and also for making this event possible by providing the facilities for it. So thank you. But how are you, Janne?
I'm very good. And yeah, me as well. I'm about to head to the summer holidays soon, but as usual, you have to first get the world ready and everything done before that. So busy days, of course. And yeah, we're very happy also to be part of your book project. It's fun how I have actually realized recently that, I think the buzz around the core banking renewals have gone down a bit. I think it's maybe a bit something that the banks are not that eager to talk about because these projects usually might be quite long and expensive and even cause service disruptions. So it's not only fun and positive things. Maybe in the early days, banks were quite bold and proud that they're investing $1 billion into a new core, and now it's maybe the vice versa thing, but it definitely is something that is there. There's still a lot of work to do. It's crucial to have systems modernized at some level, and yeah, I think that's something that's not going anywhere. And your book is definitely something that is of interest for a lot of bankers. I already checked the list who's coming, and there are a lot of bank tech people from various banks joining. So yeah, I'm also looking forward to the event and to read the book.
Worth noting also that the venue is very cool. It's Maria 01, which is a former hospital. So if you want to look for symbolism in terms of core modernization by doing a launch event in a hospital, there you go.
I like the sound. I didn't actually realize that it used to be a hospital, but it's a very nice venue. We've actually recorded, I believe, a couple of our early Nordic FinTech highlights episode there as well, when we tried to do it all in person rather than like this. But you're absolutely right, Janne. There is a slow shift in how the industry are looking at core modernization. I potentially move an awful lot of that onto its head. We're going to discuss that at the venue, at how I look at doing this progressive modernization, and as I call it, how to do the progressive modernization without losing the bank and still being able to operate as a bank going forwards. I have some different ideas on it. I have some experiences, some scars, some good scars, some painful scars, and we'll talk all about that at the event. But one of the things that I think is fundamentally happening is the growth of agentic AI is not reducing the need for attacking the legacy. It's actually increasing it. And I think as we start moving more and more into the growth of agentic AI, agents talking to agents, the ability to support this more real-time, dare I say, almost humans not in the middle capabilities, the legacy becomes an even more critical element. And we started this discussion, Ville, in the last episode where we spoke with Eric, who recently published a book on the wider scope of legacy.
Yes, we did indeed. It's a topic that has been going throughout this season and even the previous season, as the agentic AI capabilities are becoming more mainstream and indeed more tangible for many of us. I personally used AI agents to plan many of my trips, for example, this year, and I can totally. It's something you can see in front of you. This kind of agentic commerce, for instance, agents driving processes all the way to the point of making the transaction. where the process stops today. And that's the part where the banks need to be focusing or will be focusing now very, very soon, if not already, in terms of how to interact with agents. And that requires modernization, at least on that surface. Again, how banks orchestrate everything in the background. Does that mean that you have to do everything down to the core in a completely new way? Not necessarily, but again, finding the right way to serve these new types of customers who are robots effectively is going to be a very big theme for the upcoming year, and especially for our next season as well.
Actually, talking about that, we said that we're not going to dive into news articles, but as we've ended up on this narrative of agentic AI and agents making transactions, there was one news article that came out recently here in the Nordics, which you sitting in transaction banking in Nordea, Ville, this is quite up your street. So maybe we can get a little bit of a deep dive on this. There was an announcement, I think it was a couple of weeks ago. It's in the newsletter that will be sent out by Helsinki Fintech Farm, that Nordea, in partnership with Mastercard, executed their first agentic payment transaction. Explain this a little bit further. Tell us what happened here. Was it complete agentic end to end? Was there still humans involved? Are the robots taking over?
Yes, the robots are taking over, but that's a completely different topic. In this case, maybe take a step back and go to the basics of how agentic payments happen. Typically, you can have two stages of agentic payments. It is the human in the loop, which is the first stage, where the agents basically prepare everything, they prepare the transactions, but then you as a human ultimately approve and authorize the payment once you have reviewed what the agent actually is proposing. That's the easiest or the first step towards this more autonomous commerce, which would be the second stage. Second stage would be fully autonomous processes where you basically give a mandate to your agent to be able to do transactions within certain limits, within certain thresholds. Basically, you trust the agent to do their job to the extent that you can just tell them to go book a thing and just pay for it and show me what you got. So you're giving a lot of trust to the agent. Now, especially on the latter scenario, it's very important for banks and the customers to understand who will be liable for certain scenarios when things go wrong, for instance. And it is the focus of the industry right now to make sure that the rules are clear for all participants in those value chains, and the correct guardrails to prevent unwanted behavior are also in place. And there's a lot of work to be done before we get there. But going back to the news article that or the press release that we from Nordea made about this agentic payment, it was definitely on the first category. So the idea is that in this case, Mastercard are providing an agentic commerce or agent pay type of a scheme, allowing Mastercard cards to be used for agentic payments. Has been developed by Mastercard for quite some time now. We already know that, for example, Santander in Spain did a similar transaction earlier. Nordea, we were happy to be the first bank in the Nordics to do an agentic payment, and we did this in Finland using an existing Mastercard from the Nordea portfolio with an existing customer. The payment was real. It wasn't a laboratory transaction. The payment actually went through, and it was used on a real card with a real account. Now, the key for making this happen is actually the work that the card schemes are doing already. So again, they are basically doing exactly what I described earlier. They are defining the liabilities, the responsibilities, creating the acceptance for agentic payments so that the agents are able to start or initiate these payments in an effective way, and it gets routed correctly to the card issuing bank, in our case, for example. Now, this comes with an array of complexities with regards to the kind of contextual data of these payments, which we need to process as the issuer. from a fraud and fraud prevention perspective, and we need to be able to identify and authorize this payment in a correct way and report it in the right way as well. And that's where the bulk of the work really happened, also with regards to this test transaction. So again, under the surface, a lot of work, as you would expect, to make these things happen, even though it might look simple from the surface, where you basically just authorize an agentic payment as the agent has proposed it. And again, it's exciting times, especially because there's so much to learn still here. And also want to be clear that this was a one-off test transaction at this point in time. We learned a lot, and we will continue learning, and we will see when this will be made available for the broader public. But there's no kind of announcements on that front quite yet.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, you have just attended another lesson in the FinTech Daydreaming Payments Summer School. We thank our professor, Dr. Ville, Payment Extraordinaire, for his deep dive into the agentic payment capabilities potentially going to be offered in the future by Nordea and Mastercard. Thank you very much, and good night. No, joking aside, I have to admit that this whole journey towards agentic payments, agentic banking, agentic everything, I've started creating agents as well, looking at investments, asking the agents to look at the market and propose what I should be buying, what I shouldn't be buying, selling, etc. So far, it's not being too dramatic. Still human making the decision at the end, but it does go off every morning. It's set up as an agent. It will give me a portfolio view as such every morning at 10 o'clock. It doesn't have access to my trading app. It doesn't have access to my bank. So it relies on me actually updating it afterwards to say whether I acted on the recommendations that it made or not. But I can absolutely see a future of agents helping us in an awful lot of what we're doing. How about you, Janne? Would you be happy to allow an agent to make decisions for you where it involves transactions with your hard-earned cash?
Yeah, I think, well, maybe the step to go fully autonomous is maybe a bigger thing, but definitely the advisory phase, really happy and welcoming that very much. I think that's something where we are, like, banks probably have to take a stance that, they value very much their the trust they have, and they might have conservative customers, and of course there are also regulatory matters as well when it comes to investment advice. But then at the same time, we have already a lot of people who are just using AI themselves. They're building robo-advisory themselves because banks are not doing that. And then of course we have this copy trading thing, which is more like having the social aspect, and people are really like putting their faith to unknown people. And that's something that's going to maybe separate the banking industry, that who wants to be more wild and who wants to be more conservative.
I have to admit, I can remember back to, and now I'm feeling old and demonstrating I'm old, but I can remember back to when the internet first started and kicked off. And initially it was bulletin boards and those sort of things, right? And then it evolved into static pages, and then you got Google. And at some point in time in that journey, it got to a point where I sort of said to myself, I can't understand how I survived before Google. I'm so dependent now on Google and the instant gratification of information, etc. It became a fundamental part of how we operated and lived and worked, and Google was just there. Or search. We probably shouldn't just say Google. There were lots of other search engines as well. And we were having a drink quite recently, Ville, and I said exactly the same thing to you. I cannot remember how I survived before these agentic AI capabilities and the generative AI. It has become so integrated into the things I do, being able to make me progressively faster and more agile in being able to get work and life done. it's amazing how we end up dependent to a certain degree on these technologies and capabilities. Do you two feel like you've got to a point where you're not completely dependent, but you're feeling more and more dependent on these capabilities in your day-to-day life?
I wouldn't say day-to-day life, but certainly certain work tasks are becoming faster to execute. You can do research, find research much faster with Gen AI tools compared to the traditional search tools that we used to use before Gen AI became available broadly. So yeah, in short, yes, it makes work, especially specialist work where that requires finding information from multiple sources and synthesizing that information into something that people can maybe understand. In that work, it is irreplaceable at this point in time. I do feel that a lot of the day-to-day work that we use Gen AI for is becoming so integrated part of the process that we don't even think about it anymore. And I think that's the way it's going to start to kind of slowly fade into the background in the way we work in a very similar way as Google did when they kind of became mainstream for search. So yeah, I totally see that. On a slightly related topic, by the way, Paul, we released a paper or an infographic by Mobi just lately, and it was called "A Payment is Not a Payment." The idea there was to compare account-to-account payment to card payments. The reason I'm mentioning that is that I see a lot of parallels when it comes to this agentic AI commerce and agentic AI payments, because those same questions need to be answered in terms of responsibility, liability, and all of these things that are not visible to when you actually make the payment. Typically, the first question that when you do a payment is like, how hard can it be? You basically just make an API call, done with it. But that's not the way it works. There's so much things that are going on behind the scenes. And that's what we've tried to do in the infographic that we released through Mobi Forum, which is that we wanted to show all the complexities behind the payment and how do these things differ and where are the things that are still might be gaps, for example, in account-to-account payments where services are provided by the card schemes, for example. And this is exactly the same conversation we will have with agentic commerce. Maybe we need to do a follow-up on the infographic, kind of on agentic AI perspective, but that's an idea.
I think we absolutely should, and it will be interesting to see that expansion, particularly as it's a digital infographic, so it's interactive and you can play with it. Again, we'll link to that as well in our description. Ville is our description man, so I'll make sure that he remembers to include those links, including the link to the registration for my book event. And this has turned into an episode of announcements. Do you have any announcements, Janne, that you want to share? You've got a banking conference that you guys are organizing. I think it's in October, but a little way out. But please bring an announcement to this episode.
Yeah, for sure. We do definitely have the Nordic Banking Forum coming. It's at the end of November. But yeah, before that, there will be a lot of things going on from our side. Both a lot of sessions here in Helsinki, but what more and more stuff happening at the Digital Banking Academy online. So definitely that's something worth looking out. Especially regulatory and AML issues are what we're focusing on right now. That's something that doesn't go out of fashion ever.
The Digital Banking Academy is something that we haven't really mentioned before. It's a growing pillar of what you're doing in Helsinki Fintech Farm. Maybe you just want to share quickly with our listeners. Here's the announcement, you see. Share with our listeners a little bit about the Digital Banking Academy. And again, we'll include a link in the description. Yeah,
for sure. So yeah, financial industries, of course, changing in a rapid pace. And then, like I mentioned, then there's also there are cool stuff to know and understand and what people want to learn. But then there's also a lot of mandatory stuff you have to be aware of your company's capabilities, especially when it comes to things like AML, and the regulators are of course also following that area. So want to really make that field, especially AML training, a bit more modern and more accessible, especially for smaller companies who are newly regulated. So we're introducing this subscription model to the AML training instead of just buying one-off trainings with a huge price from traditional companies. So yeah, that's what we're changing in the market with the Digital Banking Academy.
Very interesting.
And now that being said, so maybe we should have Professor Ville having his own payment technology module there. I really feel that he would be eager to provide that.
Yes, we can talk about my prices later, but
and if we're going to rename him Professor Ville, I want him to have like hair that looks like, you know, Albert Einstein. I want an Albert Einstein look on him, sticky up hair and a big bushy grey beard.
Plus,
right?
I want my white lab coat as well, of course.
Exactly. Yes, with a lots of pens in it in different colors. We're starting to build a new image and brand of Dr. Ville, the payments nerd here on FinTech Daydreaming. This is fantastically good. But talking about the end of the season, we're sort of rounding off here. This is the last episode of season 13. Gosh, season 13. We've been doing this, Ville, for what is it, 6 years now, and it feels still like we started just yesterday. It's growing. We're getting more and more listeners. We're getting more and more partners. It's getting very exciting. But if we take a view back on this season, what has been the highlight for you? What has been for you, Ville, the episode you remember, if you've got a favorite?
I have two. First of all, we started very strong. So the first guest episode that we had was with Aleksi Grym from Bank of Finland. And we got him as a guest at the exact right time when he was promoted to be the head of payment systems in Bank of Finland. And we talked about of course, the digital euro, but also private sector alternatives like stablecoins and tokenized deposits. And I think it was a very, very good discussion. We've had Aleksi very briefly on the podcast before, as we've done these kind of live event recordings. But I was happy to kind of have the chance to sit down with him virtually and just have a discussion of 45 minutes about the topics that we work with every day. And that really was a standout. I wanted Aleksi for a long time to be as a guest, and we finally got him for a proper episode. So I was very happy about that. The other one was with Vipps MobilePay. Vipps MobilePay and specifically Baard from their partnership team has been a very prominent figure when it comes to the Nordic instant payments and wallet space being representative of Vipps MobilePay. And we heard the full story of Vipps MobilePay and what they're doing now and what they also want to do in the future, which acts as almost like a template for person-to-person instant payments and broader wallet payments in kind of the European landscape. We also got the picture of how they are aligning with the European interoperability with all the other wallets we have in Europe, and how to make this kind of a digital euro alternative happen from a private sector perspective from the kind of wallet provider space. So those were the kind of my two major highlights. Obviously, we had a lot of fantastic guests and really fun episodes with you, Janne, on the Nordic FinTech highlights as well. So again, too difficult to choose a favorite one, but if I have to do it, it will be these two. What about you, Paul?
I actually have to admit with you, although, you know, I feel a little bit like all of these episodes are our children. And we always say that we love all of our children and we don't have a favorite. So I feel to a certain degree the same way with all of our episodes. It's very hard to pick a favorite. I think out of this season, I agree with you. If I had to pick just one episode, Aleksi Grym was a fantastically good discussion. It touched all of the hotspots that we are keen and interested in, you know, the growth of digital euro, the changes in the landscape, the sovereignty that we're seeing being built up in a grander scale. Now we'll continue looking at the geopolitical situation. And also it helped us to pick away at our perspective and mood associated with stable coin, cryptocurrency. It's always that fantastic dynamic between digital euro and stable coins. It's so to me, that was probably the best episode that we had. Also, I have to admit, the last discussion we had with Eric around legacy, unfortunately, the good part of the discussion happened just as we were ending the episode. But with a connection back to my book, the whole discussion around legacy, I think is very interesting and very focused for me. And I also think, yet again, there is a connection here between digital euro and central bank digital currencies, back to this whole notion of modernization, progressive modernization, rip out the core in my book. Because you look at the whole support for banks around, I won't say specifically stable coins, but very much around central bank digital currency, it's going to have fundamental impact on how banks manage liquidity, how banks separate public money from private money. And that is going to impact most of the technology stack as well in the banks. How about for you, Janne? What has been the highlight for you of season 13?
Yeah, I can't exactly recall what happened in which episode, but yeah, generally I think we have been talking, of course, a lot about agentic. Agentic has been something topic of this spring, which we already covered a bit. Then, as you said the payment rails. Maybe first it was more about account to account. Now the discussion has shifted a bit more to the digital euro. I think the common factor there is also the European self-sovereignty and kind of to become independent of the card infrastructure. Then I think we have discussed a lot of SME finance here, a lot of neobanks, especially on the business side, coming up with new innovations. So yeah, there have been quite a fruitful discussions. And yeah, of course, Ville's favorite topic, stablecoins.
Since we're on the topic of stablecoins and digital euro, sorry, I have to interrupt here for a moment because this is quite annoying to me sometimes, which is that people put stablecoins and private sector stablecoins, or broadly the blockchain and DLT-based tokenized forms of liabilities, into the same category as the digital euro. While they're both under the category of the broad umbrella of digital currencies, they couldn't be any more different from a technology and support perspective. So Paul, when you mentioned earlier that the banks have to figure out how to support these new forms of money, that is correct. But because the fundamental differences on how they are being built and why they are being built for, what are they being built for, the banks do need to consider these as very separate categories. I find this a little bit annoying because many times in the public discourse, these things are mixed together. So it would be like stablecoins would be an alternative to the digital euro and vice versa. They are not. They are solving completely different problems, as was discussed in the episode with Aleksi as well, quite clearly. So again, just wanted to get that off my chest. So the completely different technology stacks, other is account-based and the other one is based on DLT to a certain extent. And they are fundamentally different also from a user use case and use perspective once they become available. So yeah, anyway, just want to get that off my chest.
No, I agree with you completely. And it goes back to whenever anyone brings this discussion up to me, I fundamentally start it with, do you understand the difference between public and private money? If you don't understand the difference between those two, it's impossible to have that discussion. You need to fundamentally understand that one is a public liability, the other one is a private liability, irrespective of which chain you're going through, what technology you're talking about, etc. And it's a fundamental part. So I agree with you 100%, yes. But there was another thing that you brought up, Janne, a minute ago, which was back to the sovereignty thing. And I think if we look at news recently around certain Gen AI providers having to remove access to non-US users mandated by the US government, I think we're starting to see this need for understanding the impact of sovereignty coming towards the banks and regulated industries as well. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out over the next 6 to 12 months when we start looking at public cloud providers and other key technology providers that are predominantly US based. I don't know, sitting in a bank, Ville, how is this playing out, seen from your view?
The banks are always concerned about risk. So in all different shapes and forms, and managing that risk and making sure that the right decisions are made in order to mitigate those risks that won't then disrupt our customers' lives, and of course makes the bank more safe as well. So all of this discussion when it comes to sovereignty is playing towards that goal. So again, as we see, for example, the dependency on non-European actors from a technology and scheme management perspective right now in payments, that is a concern that is being partly addressed by the European Central Bank with the digital euro, and it's also being addressed by the private sector through associations like the EuroPA, creating interoperable alternatives for traditional non-European payment methods in Europe. Now in AI, again, same thing. So as the US government, for example, now limited the availability of certain models, for example, of course, this needs to be taken into account moving forward from a broader European perspective as well. What would happen if Europeans were excluded, for example, from the frontier models in one shape or another? And what is the alternative? Is it going to be a European alternative? Probably not. Is there going to be a need for broader collaboration and understanding on how these models are being treated and made available? I think that's going to be the path forward. Of course, we also have to take into account that there are open source options coming, for example, from China. DeepSeek, for instance, released a very advanced model quite soon after the Fable model was announced. And there are alternatives available out there. This is going to be a very, very interesting debate in the coming years, and I don't think it's going to. We're seeing we haven't seen a lot yet, but there's going to be a lot of movement in this space. From a bank perspective, it just boils down to risk management. How do you make sure that things work, and you're making sure that your customers are safe from all these kind of new angles that might be coming from either from technology independence perspective or new threats provided by these more advanced AI models, for example. So we will be seeing in the next season and the coming year a lot of stories about this. I'm fairly certain.
You're absolutely right. I think this is going to be one of the threads that run through our next season. But with all of that in mind, Janne, as a consumer of banking services here in the Nordics or in Finland, would you change your alliances or change your bank depending upon whether the bank you were with or the bank you might move to were using predominantly US-based services versus European-based services, be that cloud providers or anything else? Would it have an impact on your choice?
Not honestly as a consumer, as a, as an entrepreneur, we do start to think a bit more at Fintech Farm, like, hey, do we have European alternatives and so on? But then actually not as a consumer, I have not started to really think that is this running on AWS or Elisa or whatever. So yeah, honestly not.
Okay. I don't think it's affecting me either, but then I, like you, I sit in the cusp, right? I am a consumer of banking, but at the same time, I'm also embedded into the world of banking IT, banking business, banking transformation. So it's an interesting schizophrenic world to be sitting in.
Yeah,
we are.
All of these topics are actually very similar because people don't tend to care, nor actually maybe they even shouldn't care until the bad thing happens. So again, it's just if somebody makes a decision somewhere that excludes certain regions, for example, with certain technology, and then like half of everything shuts down as a result, that's when you care, because then and then you hope that the work would have been done before and there would have been measures done to mitigate these types of risks. So again, it's always when the kind of excrement hits the fan, so to say, that's when everybody cares, and it's up to institutions and governments and politicians and banks, yes, to make sure that these risks are avoided to the extent as possible. And I think that's what people fail to see sometimes in the value of institutions as they work on these topics.
it actually gives a nice lineage back to my book, because that's one of the things that I talk about in my book is, do you solve the problems before the incident happens, or do you wait until the incident happened and then panic to solve it? Fix the leaking roof whilst the sun is shining rather than waiting for the storm and then try and fix the roof. I also talk about the duct tape philosophy in my book, the amount of IT systems that I held together by duct tape, notion of we'll fix it now and worry about it later. And those temporary fixes become permanent fixes that at some point in time can't hold the weight anymore. But again, we will discuss all of this in more detail on the 13th of August in Helsinki at my book launch event that is being sponsored by Helsinki Fintech Farm and the Digital Banking Academy. We are running out of time, as we always do in these fantastic episodes when we have the discussions. When the three of us get together and hit buttons that excite us, we end up talking forever. And I can promise you, sometimes we do get together and we can talk all night and all day about all of these things, and sometimes we do. But unfortunately, because we want to keep our episodes to a sensible amount of time, we need to start winding down. And as is always the case, we cannot do an episode of FinTech Daydreaming without a joke. Janne is our standing joke master when we are doing these Nordic FinTech Highlights episodes. So Janne, do you have a joke to delight us and make us smile for the summer?
Yes. So, where did the IT guy go?
Excuse me?
Where did the IT guy go?
Where did the IT guy go? Do we need to know which IT guy, or is it just generally any IT guy?
I didn't think about that far.
Okay, I have no idea. Ville, where did the IT guy go?
I don't know, summer vacation.
He probably ran somewhere.
What a way to the season. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. He probably ran somewhere. Yes. Was there bitcoins involved in this by any chance?
Of course, aren't they always? No, I actually think they might have already changed to something else. There's actually a pretty good Finnish fintech company who's tracking those criminal Bitcoin transfers. So I don't know, maybe the ransom guys has to change into some altcoins.
I'm waiting for the day of quantum computing. This is a horrendous sidetrack, and we're trying to end the episode. But I used to have a NAS at home, a network access storage device that had all of my data on it. And I'm not going to say who the vendor was of this box, but it turns out that the vendor had managed to not close all back doors in their operating system, which was a Linux-based operating system. And someone managed to scan the internet and brute force attack everybody who had one of these NAS devices, encrypt all of the files on them. And then, you got this famous, we've encrypted all your devices, pay us X number of Bitcoins, and we will give you the ability to decrypt. That NAS is still sitting here, turned off, waiting for some sort of solution for me to unencrypt all of those files without me having to pay any Bitcoin. I had a saving grace because all of my data was also saved to a cloud provider. So therefore, I didn't lose any of my data, but I still want to get and break it all up. So, but there we go. That was a sidetrack, Bitcoin and ransomware and everything else. We are at the end of a season. We're at the end of an episode. It has been fantastic to have a discussion with you all again. Very quickly, Ville, any final remarks before we close?
Maybe on the last remark you just said, the combination of quantum and the development in AI is going to create very interesting times in the decentralized finance ecosystem, where all of the code is available publicly as immutable code running these transactions. And I'm sure AI is able to find correlations and kind of connections between these protocols in a way that humans could never do. So I'm predicting for the next year, we're going to see some very interesting hacks happening in the DeFi landscape that might, for example, put off or delay the entrance of regulated banks into this space due to the kind of exponential risks related to AI-related activity. But anyway, that's my final words.
We have lined up a whole lot of interesting subjects for season 14 to come after the summer break. Janne, any final thoughts, words, comments, or reflections from you?
No, just thank you for having me for another season, and of course, great summer for you, but also to all of our dear listeners.
Wonderful, yes. And from me as a last one, my book, Rip Out the Core, talking about progressive modernization and a future towards platform-enabled banking, is finally done. It is being published. It will be out officially at the end of July. Pre-order is already available on Amazon. Please order the book. And if you want to get a free copy and you work in banking and you live in Finland, potentially in Helsinki, there will be an event on Thursday, the 13th of August in Helsinki. Registration is, the link is in the description. Spaces are restricted. It's not that big a venue. We want it cozy. We want relevant people there. We want you from the banking world to come and join us in the discussion around the journey of progressive modernization and how to deal with legacy. That was another plug from me, my book, Rip Out the Core. I can never get enough of saying that. But until next time, until after the summer, after we've all had a relaxing time, refreshed, charged up our batteries and ready to come back and discuss the world of fintech and banking technology, this has been Fintech Daydreaming.
This is Fintech Daydreaming.